Imagine waking up to the sound of someone sneezing directly onto wooden floorboards, followed by the unmistakable clatter of a goat escaping through the front door. Welcome to the Weary Traveller Inn, where your day begins, not with gentle sunlight streaming through pristine windows, but with the acrid smell of last night's ale mixing with the morning's first disaster. You find yourself in medieval England in the year 1348, where every day is a negotiation between survival and sanity. The inn sits like a wooden fortress against the cold, its thick timber walls blackened by years of hearth smoke and the occasional kitchen fire that got too ambitious. The floors creak with stories of 1,000 travelers, each board worn smooth by boots that have walked through mud, snow, and occasionally worse things we do not name before breakfast. The first person you encounter is Evangeline, though everyone simply calls her the barmaid, with the kind of reverence usually reserved for saints or tax collectors. At 28, she moves through the chaos of the inn with the precision of a master craftsman and the sharp wit of someone who has heard every possible excuse for not paying one's tab. Her dark hair is perpetually escaping from beneath a linen cap that has seen better decades, and her apron bears the battle scars of countless meals served, drinks spilled, and the occasional fight broken up with nothing more than a well-timed glare. Evangeline inherited this beautiful disaster when her father, the previous innkeeper, vanished one autumn morning like smoke from a dying fire. Some say he went to find better ale suppliers in the next county. Others whisper he simply walked into the forest and chose the company of wolves over that of traveling merchants. Regardless of his fate, he left behind a legacy of organized chaos that only Evangeline seems capable of managing. If nobody dies today, it was a good day, she mutters, echoing the inn's unofficial motto as she surveys the morning wreckage. A merchant lies, snoring beneath table 3, using his coin purse as a pillow with the confidence of a man who has clearly never heard of pickpockets. Near the hearth, a supposed knight sits polishing armor that looks suspiciously like it was assembled from kitchen pots and prayer. The inn smells like a complex bouquet of wood smoke, unwashed wool, and the eternal mystery that is medieval stew. The walls are thick stone on the bottom, timber above, with small windows that let in just enough light to see the dust motes dancing like tiny spirits. Rushes cover the floor, mixed with herbs when Evangeline can afford them, creating a carpet that crunches softly underfoot and occasionally reveals lost coins or someone's missing boot. But here is the thing about Evangeline that no one suspects. This woman, who commands the inn with such fierce efficiency, speaks for different dialects fluently and can read Latin better than most monks. She keeps this secret locked away like treasure, knowing that a woman with too much learning in these times draws the wrong kind of attention. Instead, she lets everyone assume she is simply very good at keeping track of who owes what and how much ale they can handle before they start challenging furniture to duels. The morning light filters through oiled cloth windows, casting everything in a golden haze that makes even the questionable stew look almost appetizing. Evangeline begins her daily ritual of bringing order to chaos, starting with gently poking the merchant under table 3 with a long wooden spoon until he stirs. "Morning, Master Edmund," she says with the kind of forced cheer that suggests she knows exactly what his response will be. "Did someone steal my horse?" he mumbles, sitting up with his grey hair standing at impossible angles. "Your horse is exactly where you left it last night," Evangeline replies, not mentioning that where he left it was in the stable, where horses typically belong, because he had been too drunk to remember the basic geography of innkeeping. Therefore, the day begins as all days begin at the Weary Traveller Inn, with minor mysteries, major personalities, and the comforting certainty that whatever happens next will be thoroughly unexpected. The resigned innkeeper, the man who emerges from behind the rough wooden counter, moves with the deliberate pace of someone who has learned that rushing only leads to more broken things. Edmund Hartwell, 45 years old, and bearing the emotional scars of both war and hospitality, surveys his domain with the expression of a general who has won the battle but lost his enthusiasm for fighting. His graying beard is neatly trimmed, a small vanity from his soldiering days when appearance mattered for morale. Now it serves mainly to catch the occasional crumb and provide something to stroke thoughtfully when guests ask questions like, "Is this meat supposed to be this color?" Or "Why does my room smell like wet sheep?" Edmund had purchased the weary traveler 15 years ago with his military pension and dreams of a quiet life. He had envisioned peaceful evenings by the fire, perhaps reading the occasional letter from old comrades, maybe even learning to play the lute. Instead, he got Evangeline's chaotic brilliance, a rotating cast of characters who seemed to view the inn as their personal theater, and a goat that no one claims to own but everyone feeds. Morning brings fresh possibilities, he announces to no one in particular, though his tone suggests he views these possibilities with deep suspicion. Therefore, he begins his daily inspection, checking that the ale barrels have not mysteriously emptied themselves overnight, and that no one has decided to use the fireplace for anything more creative than heating. The knight with the questionable armor raises his hand like a student seeking permission to speak. "Good sir, I require lodging for another night, though I must confess my purse has grown rather light." Edmund studies him with the weary patience of someone who has heard this exact speech approximately 300 times. The man's armor appears to have been assembled from various kitchen implements and at least one chamber pot that has been painted silver. His sword, when he draws it to demonstrate his knightly credentials, makes a sound like someone spreading butter on toast. "Sir Roderick," Edmund says, because the man had introduced himself with great ceremony the previous evening. "Your accommodation shall continue, provided you assist Evangeline with the morning duties." Sir Roderick nods vigorously, apparently delighted to have avoided the complicated mathematics of actually paying for things. But Edmund carries secrets heavier than unpaid tabs. Sometimes, when the inn grows quiet in the deep hours before dawn, the memories return. The battle where his decisions led good men to their deaths. The moment when he realized that following orders and doing right were not always the same thing. He had left the military not because he was a coward, but because he could no longer bear the weight of other people's lives in his hands. The inn, he had thought, would be different. Here, the worst that could happen was burnt stew or an argument over who gets the bed with fewer fleas. He had not anticipated that running an inn would require many of the same skills as commanding soldiers: diplomacy, resource management, and the ability to keep a straight face when everything is falling apart. "Evangeline," he calls, "what disasters await us today?" She appears beside him with the silent efficiency of someone who has mastered the art of being exactly where she is needed. The merchant's horse has developed opinions about its breakfast. The supposed pilgrim has been asking very specific questions about our other guests, and someone has been feeding the goat ale. The goat has been drinking. Edmund asks. The goat has been drinking, she confirms. It is currently attempting to sing. Therefore, Edmund does what he does every morning. He takes a deep breath, reminds himself that at least no one is shooting arrows at him, and prepares to face another day of controlled chaos. The inn may not be the peaceful retirement he had envisioned, but it is his, and these ridiculous people have somehow become his responsibility. Besides, as he often tells himself while counting the coins at the end of each day, if nobody dies today, it was a good day. The night of dubious origins, the morning sun catches the dented surface of what Sir Roderick claims is his helmet. Though Evangeline suspects it began life as a large cooking pot with ambitious dreams. He sits at the corner table, carefully arranging his armor with the solemn concentration of someone preparing for a royal audience rather than breakfast at a country inn. At 50 years old, Sir Roderick possesses the kind of confidence that can only come from years of practice or complete delusion. His graying hair falls in what he insists are noble waves around a face that has clearly never met a battle it could not avoid. His mustache, however, is genuinely impressive, waxed to sharp points that could probably be used as emergency writing implements. "Good morrow, fair Evangeline," he announces, as if he is addressing a court rather than a woman, who is currently scraping something unidentifiable off the bottom of a wooden bowl. "I trust the morning finds you in good health and high spirits." Evangeline pauses in her scraping to give him the look she reserves for people who use the word morrow before anyone has had their first ale of the day. "It finds me cleaning things that should not need cleaning, Sir Roderick. How does the morning find you?" "Contemplating the great deeds that await," he replies, then immediately contradicts his noble bearing by using his sword to cut a piece of bread. The blade, dull as a spoon and about as threatening as a wet cat, saws through the crust with the efficiency of someone trying to cut stone with a feather. Therefore, the mystery of Sir Roderick deepens with each passing day. His stories change depending on his audience and his sobriety level. Sometimes he fought dragons in the Holy Land. Other times he rescued princesses from towers that moved locations based on how impressed his listeners appear. His most recent tale involved a tournament where he unhorsed 12 knights in a single afternoon, though he becomes suspiciously vague about which tournament, when it occurred, or why no one else seems to remember it. But here is what Edmund has observed about their resident knight. His hands bear no sword calluses. His seat on a horse suggests someone more familiar with carts than war horses, and his knowledge of actual combat tactics extends roughly as far as hit the other fellow before he hits you. However, he possesses an encyclopedic knowledge of heraldry, court etiquette, and the proper way to address everyone from bishops to blacksmiths. "Sir Roderick," Edmund says, settling down across from him with his own piece of torture bread, "tell me again about your family crest." The knight's eyes light up with genuine enthusiasm. "Ah, the Blackthorn arms, a proud lineage dating back to ... He pauses, his expression growing suddenly evasive. "Well, dating back quite some time. The symbol, naturally, represents our family's commitment to two noble ideals." "And what symbol would that be?" Evangeline asks, though she has heard this story before and knows exactly where it leads. A black thorn, upon a field of significance. "You mean you cannot remember?" she says, not unkindly. Sir Roderick's mustache droops slightly. "Memory is a fickle companion to those who have lived such eventful lives." The truth, which Edmund has pieced together through careful observation and patient listening, is that Sir Roderick was likely expelled from some minor order of knights for reasons he will not discuss. His knowledge of proper protocol is too accurate to be invented, but his combat skills are too non-existent to be legitimate. He carries himself with the bearing of someone who once belonged somewhere important, but his desperation to impress strangers suggests he no longer belongs anywhere at all. "Perhaps today you might assist with the morning preparations," Edmund suggests. "Your expertise in matters of protocol could help us ensure our guests receive proper treatment." This immediately brightens Sir Roderick's mood. Indeed, a knight's duties extend far beyond the battlefield. "I shall oversee the morning arrangements with the attention such matters deserve." Therefore, Sir Roderick rises from his seat with elaborate ceremony, adjusts his questionable armor, and prepares to supervise breakfast with the same gravity others might bring to crowning a king. His sword, freshly employed as a bread knife, clatters against his makeshift breastplate as he walks, creating a sound like someone dropping spoons down a chimney. But despite his obvious fabrications and tragic optimism, there is something genuinely endearing about Sir Roderick's refusal to abandon his aspirations. In a world where most people have given up their dreams by the time they can grow a proper beard, he continues to believe in the possibility of glory, honor, and maybe finding a horse that will not laugh at his armor. And in the strange ecosystem of the weary traveler inn, that kind of stubborn hope serves a purpose, even if that purpose is mainly entertainment. The traveller of mysterious past, the woman in the corner booth, maintains the kind of stillness that makes everyone else in the room feel suddenly clumsy. Lady Cordelia Ashworth, or so she claims, sits with her back to the wall and her eyes on every entrance, a habit that speaks of experience rather than paranoia. At 35, she possesses the rare combination of elegance and wariness that comes from navigating dangerous waters while wearing silk gloves. Her travelling cloak, though dusty from the road, reveals glimpses of fine fabric underneath. Her hands, when she reaches for her wine cup, bear no calluses from honest labour, but her fingers move with the precise economy of someone who has learned to pack quickly and travel light. Most telling of all, she never fully relaxes, even when she appears to be dozing by the fire. "Good morning, my lady," Evangeline says, approaching with the careful courtesy reserved for guests who pay in actual silver rather than promises and questionable poetry. "I trust you slept well." "As well as can be expected," Lady Cordelia replies, her voice carrying the refined accent of the royal court, though something in her tone suggests she has grown accustomed to sleeping with one eye open. "The accommodations are quite comfortable, thank you." But Evangeline notices things. She notices that Lady Cordelia's saddlebags contain more books than clothes, that her knowledge of herbs extends far beyond what any merchant should know, and that she speaks Latin with the fluency of a scholar, not the broken phrases of someone who simply wants to impress priests. Most intriguingly, she carries a small wooden box that she guards more carefully than her purse. And yesterday Evangeline glimpsed what looked suspiciously like coded letters inside. "Your business takes you far from home?" Edmund asks, settling nearby with the casual manner of someone making polite conversation, though his soldier's instincts have also noted the way she positions herself. "Trade routes," she says smoothly. "Silk and spices from the eastern ports. One must travel extensively to maintain proper connections. Therefore, she weaves truth and fiction with the skill of someone who has had considerable practice." Lady Cordelia does indeed know about trade routes, but her knowledge comes from years of carrying messages between noble houses, not negotiating prices for imported luxuries. She can identify quality silk because she once lived surrounded by it, and she knows about spices because certain ones can be ground into powders that serve purposes far removed from cooking. The truth, which she guards more carefully than any treasure, is that Lady Cordelia was once married to Lord Marcus Ashworth, a man whose political ambitions exceeded his wisdom. When his plans to overthrow certain royal appointments were discovered, he conveniently died in a hunting accident that involved an unusual number of arrows for what was supposed to be a peaceful morning ride. His widow, however, proved surprisingly difficult to locate when the king's men came calling. "The roads must be challenging this time of year," Sir Roderick observes, apparently attempting to engage in sophisticated conversation while simultaneously trying to cut his breakfast with a spoon, having apparently forgotten where he left his sword. "Indeed," she agrees, "but one learns to adapt. Flexibility is essential when circumstances change unexpectedly." Her words carry the weight of experience. Lady Cordelia has spent the past 3 years moving from inn to inn, carrying messages for people who prefer their communications to avoid official channels. She has developed an expertise in reading people, situations, and the subtle signs that indicate when it might be time to pack quickly and leave through the back entrance. But here is what makes her dangerous. She genuinely enjoys the work. After years of embroidering pillows and managing household servants, the intellectual challenge of espionage provides a satisfaction that domestic life never offered. She has discovered that she possesses a natural talent for deception, observation, and the kind of strategic thinking that her late husband always dismissed as inappropriate for feminine minds. "Perhaps you could advise us," Edmund says carefully, "about the political situation in the capital. Travellers often bring news." Lady Cordelia's smile becomes a fraction more genuine. "The king remains healthy, the nobles remain ambitious, and the common people remain concerned primarily with the price of bread." Some things, Master Edmund, never change. Therefore, she reveals just enough knowledge to establish her credibility while avoiding any details that might indicate exactly which nobles she knows personally or why their ambitions should concern anyone. But Evangeline, watching from across the room, notices the slight tension in Lady Cordelia's shoulders when certain topics arise, and the way her hand unconsciously moves toward the hidden pocket where she keeps her most important possessions. Your expertise in these matters seems quite extensive, Evangeline observes, refilling the wine cup with movements that appear casual but allow her to glimpse the contents of Lady Cordelia's travelling bag. One develops interests, Lady Cordelia replies, when one has time to observe the world's complexities. And there, in that simple phrase, lies both confession and warning. Lady Cordelia has indeed developed interests, but they extend far beyond silk trading and seasonal travel routes. She watches, she listens, she remembers, and somewhere in her careful notes lies information that could embarrass kings or elevate commoners, depending on who pays her price. The morning continues its gentle chaos around them, but beneath the surface of ordinary in life, three very different people have recognized that they are not the only ones carrying secrets. The bard who believes into this carefully balanced morning chaos bursts an explosion of enthusiasm, wearing a feathered hat and carrying what was once optimistically a lute. Garrett Pemberton, 22 years old, and filled with enough artistic ambition to power a small village, surveys the inn's common room as if it were the royal court awaiting his performance. His lute, a tragic instrument that has clearly seen better decades, possesses exactly 3 functional strings and the desperate hope that no one will notice. His clothing, while clean, bears the unmistakable signs of someone who considers artistic integrity more important than practical concerns like waterproofing or adequate padding in the seat of his trousers. "Greetings, noble gathered souls," he announces to the room at large, apparently unaware that his audience consists of people primarily concerned with breakfast and the structural integrity of their hangovers. "I bring tales of wonder, songs of glory, and ballads that shall stir your hearts to their very foundations." Evangeline pauses in her morning duties to give him the look she typically reserves for people who use phrases like noble gathered souls before anyone has had their second ale. "Master Garrett," she says with the patience of someone who has learned to manage artistic temperaments, "perhaps you might consider allowing people to finish their morning meal before stirring any foundations." But Garrett's enthusiasm proves remarkably resistant to subtle hints, direct suggestions, or the occasional thrown piece of bread. He settles at a table near the hearth, carefully tunes his 3 remaining strings to what he obviously believes is perfection, and launches into what he describes as a rousing tale of adventure and romance. The resulting sound resembles what might happen if someone taught a wounded goose to appreciate poetry. His voice, while genuinely pleasant, cannot overcome the fundamental musical challenges presented by an instrument held together with hope and horsehair. Therefore, the inn's morning atmosphere acquires an additional layer of complexity as Garrett's artistic vision collides with acoustic reality. In days of old, when knights were bold, he begins, apparently undaunted by the fact that Sir Roderick has begun using his hands to cover his ears while simultaneously trying to maintain his knightly dignity. But here is what makes Garrett genuinely endearing rather than simply annoying. He truly believes in the power of his art. He does not perform for money, though he certainly needs it. He does not sing for fame, though he clearly desires it. He performs because he genuinely believes that stories and songs can transform ordinary moments into something approaching magic. Young Master Edmund says, during a brief pause in the musical proceedings, "Your passion for your craft is evident. Perhaps you might tell us what brings you to our humble establishment." Garrett's face lights up with the kind of enthusiasm typically reserved for religious experiences or unexpected inheritances. I seek the legendary minstrel of Moorhaven, the greatest bard in all the kingdom. They say he can make grown men weep with a single verse, cause hardened warriors to lay down their arms in awe, and once made a dragon apologize for disturbing a village. Lady Cordelia raises an eyebrow with the expression of someone who has heard many unlikely stories, but finds this one particularly creative. And you believe this paragon of musical excellence resides in these parts? The trail leads here, Garrett replies with absolute conviction. Someone in this region knows where to find him. Therefore, he reveals the driving force behind his journey. Garrett seeks not merely to improve his own abilities, but to prove himself worthy of recognition from the father who dismissed his artistic ambitions as frivolous nonsense, unsuitable for a merchant's son. His pursuit of the legendary minstrel represents both artistic pilgrimage and desperate attempt to demonstrate that music can be a worthy profession for someone born to calculate profits and manage inventory. I have followed rumors and whispers across 3 counties. Your dedication is admirable, Sir Roderick observes, apparently feeling qualified to comment on quests, despite his own questionable credentials. The pursuit of excellence requires considerable sacrifice, indeed. Garrett agrees enthusiastically. I have walked countless miles, slept beneath countless stars, and performed in countless inns, all in service of my artistic development. Evangeline, who has been listening while organizing the morning's supplies, approaches with the kind of gentle directness that has made her indispensable to the inn's operation. Master Garrett, your enthusiasm honors your art, but perhaps you might consider that the greatest minstrels often hide in plain sight, and that learning sometimes comes from unexpected sources. Her words carry a weight that makes everyone pause, even Garrett. For a moment, the young bard's constant motion stills as he considers the possibility that his quest might be more complicated than simply locating a legendary figure and requesting lessons. You speak wisdom, he says finally, though his expression suggests he is not entirely certain what to do with wisdom when it conflicts with adventure. And in that moment of uncertainty, the in-strange collection of residents glimpses something beneath Garrett's relentless optimism, the genuine fear that his artistic dreams might prove as fragile as his lute strings, and that the father who dismissed his ambitions might ultimately prove correct. But the morning's revelations are far from complete, because the most mysterious resident of the Weary Traveller Inn has yet to make her opinions known. The goat of unexplained significance, no proper accounting of the Weary Traveller Inn would be complete without addressing its most enigmatic resident, a goat of indeterminate age, unclear ownership, and absolutely definite opinions about everything. She appears to be a common brown goat, until one observes her behavior more carefully and realizes that nothing about her is common at all. Brunhilde, as Evangeline has taken to calling her despite the goat's apparent preference for more formal address, has been part of the inn's ecosystem for longer than anyone can remember. She arrives when she pleases, disappears when convenient, and demonstrates an uncanny ability to appear whenever someone attempts to tell a lie, exaggerate a story, or claim ownership of belongings that clearly belong to someone else. That creature, Edmund mutters, watching as Brunhilde methodically examines Sir Roderick's armor with the critical attention of a master craftsman evaluating shoddy workmanship, possesses more intelligence than half our paying guests. Therefore, Brunhilde has become the inn's unofficial truth detector, moral compass, and occasional source of completely inexplicable phenomena. She demonstrates preferences that extend far beyond normal goat concerns, showing particular fondness for Evangeline's company, distinct disapproval of certain guests, and an apparent ability to predict weather changes, political developments, and when someone is about to do something particularly stupid. Brunhilde, Evangeline says, approaching the goat with a piece of bread saved from breakfast, "What brings you indoors this morning? Usually you prefer the garden until after the morning chaos settles." The goat accepts the bread with the dignity of someone receiving tribute. then turns her attention to Lady Cordelia with an expression that suggests either deep suspicion or profound respect. The two regard each other in silence for several moments, conducting what appears to be a complex negotiation conducted entirely through meaningful glances. Lady Cordelia, who has faced down angry nobles, suspicious customs officials, and at least one genuinely dangerous highway robber, finds herself oddly unsettled by the goat's steady gaze. "Your establishment," she says to Edmund, "maintains interesting livestock." "Brunhilde maintains herself," Edmund replies. "We merely provide occasional accommodation and attempt to stay out of her way." But today, Brunhilde's behavior carries an urgency that goes beyond her usual morning inspection of the inn's activities. She moves between the guests with deliberate purpose, pausing to study each person with the intensity of someone conducting a thorough investigation. Her attention lingers particularly on Garrett's loot, Sir Roderick's questionable armor, and the small wooden box that Lady Cordelia guards so carefully. "She seems agitated," Garrett observes, apparently feeling qualified to comment on goat psychology, despite his primary expertise being musical disasters. "Perhaps she senses something amiss." "Brunhilde always senses something," Evangeline says, but her tone carries a note of concern. In her years of working alongside the mysterious goat, she has learned to pay attention when Brunhilde's behavior shifts from merely eccentric to genuinely purposeful. Therefore, the morning takes on an additional layer of tension as the inn's human residents realize they are being evaluated by a creature whose criteria for judgment remain completely mysterious. Brunhilde completes her circuit of the common room, then positions herself near the main entrance with the alertness of a sentry expecting trouble. "What exactly is she watching for?" Lady Cordelia asks, though her voice suggests she may have some uncomfortable suspicions about the answer. Before anyone can respond, the sound of approaching horses reaches them through the thick walls. Multiple horses, moving at considerable speed, suggesting either very urgent business or very unwelcome visitors. Brunhilde's ears prick forward, and she releases a soft bleat that somehow manages to convey both warning and resignation. Edmund moves to the window, his soldier's instincts immediately alert. What he sees makes him step back with an expression that combines concern with the weary recognition of someone whose peaceful morning has just become significantly more complicated. "Evangeline," he says quietly, "we have visitors. Official visitors, by the look of their banners." Lady Cordelia's hand moves instinctively toward her travelling bag, while Sir Roderick begins the complex process of determining whether his armor makes look more like a knight or more like someone who has stolen various kitchen implements. Garrett, meanwhile, clutches his lute with the protective intensity of someone whose artistic dreams might be about to face a very practical test. But Brunhilde, having delivered her warning, settles down near the hearth with the calm satisfaction of someone whose job is now complete. Whatever happens next, she has fulfilled her responsibility to the inn's strange family. And outside, the sound of approaching authority grows steadily louder, bringing with it the promise that the weary traveler in's carefully maintained balance of secrets and stories is about to face its most serious challenge, the epilogue, when truth meets consequence. The royal investigators, it turns out, are looking for a missing noblewoman, a stolen manuscript, and a former knight stripped of his honors for conduct unbecoming. They possess descriptions that match Lady Cordelia's bearing, interest in a book that sounds remarkably similar to the one in her carefully guarded box, and questions about anyone claiming knightly status without proper documentation. Therefore, what follows is a masterpiece of creative truth-telling, strategic misdirection, and the kind of group improvisation that can only occur when people who have been keeping secrets suddenly discover they need each other's help. Evangeline, drawing upon her hidden education and natural diplomatic skills, presents herself as the inn's learned proprietress, capable of discussing legal matters with impressive sophistication. Lady Cordelia transforms into Cordelia the merchant, Her knowledge of trade routes and political situations now explained by years of legitimate business travel. Sir Roderick, in a moment of inspired honesty, admits to being a former knight squire, who maintains his master's equipment in hopes of eventual restoration to proper service. Garrett, meanwhile, provides the perfect distraction by launching into an absolutely terrible ballad about the heroic deeds of unnamed royal investigators, complete with verses praising their dedication, wisdom, and probable success in whatever noble endeavors have brought them to this humble establishment. But the real masterstroke comes from Brunhilde, who chooses this moment to demonstrate her most mysterious talent, an apparent ability to judge character with uncanny accuracy. She approaches the lead investigator, studies him with her intense goat gaze, then settles down beside him with obvious approval, effectively vouching for the entire inn through the simple act of goat diplomacy. The investigators, faced with an inn full of people whose stories hold together just well enough to be believable, a goat who clearly approves of their mission, and a bard whose enthusiastic but incompetent musical tribute makes them feel simultaneously honored and slightly embarrassed, conclude their business quickly and continue their search elsewhere. As the sound of departing horses fades into the distance, the inn's residents gather in the common room to process what has just occurred. They have successfully protected each other's secrets through a combination of quick thinking, mutual aid, and sheer luck, but they have also revealed more about themselves than any of them intended. Well, Edmund says finally, that was educational. Indeed, Lady Cordelia agrees, no longer bothering to maintain her merchant persona completely. It seems we all possess more complexity than our initial presentations suggested. Sir Roderick, still shining with pride from successfully representing himself as a legitimate member of the knightly class, even if only as a squire, straightens his questionable armor with renewed confidence. Perhaps, he suggests, honesty serves better than complete fiction, even when the truth requires careful presentation. Garrett, meanwhile, has been staring at his lute with the expression of someone who has just realized something important. The minstrel of Moorhaven, he says slowly, perhaps the legend matters less than the music itself. Evangeline smiles, the kind of smile that acknowledges both victory and the knowledge that tomorrow will bring new challenges. Perhaps, she says, we have all found what we were looking for, even if it was not exactly what we expected to find. And Brunhilde, having restored balance to her small world, settles down for a well-deserved nap, secure in the knowledge that the weary traveller inn remains a place where secrets can be kept, stories can be shared, and people can discover that they are stronger together than they ever imagined they could be alone. In the end, spending a day in a medieval inn teaches a simple truth, that human nature remains constant across the centuries, that genuine community can flourish in the most unlikely places, and that sometimes the most mysterious residents of any establishment are the ones who walk on four legs and judge us all with eyes that see far more than we realize. And if you listen carefully on quiet evenings, travelers still speak of an inn where the ale is questionable, the company is complicated, and the goat knows everyone's secrets but keeps them safe.